from a team that made it to regionals through double qualification to a team that won the most prestigious non-aspire award at every level up to Worlds and ended up going to Worlds for the very first time, we've seen a lot of growth in our team in just 1 year. Today, we're going to share with you our experiences and advice to make that happen for you. So, what is our secret? Iteration. Now, you may be thinking, everyone iterates eventually, but maybe they aren't iterating at all. After all, what is iteration? According to Google, iteration is a continuous process of improving upon the same concept, idea, or product. Where most teams mess up is not improving the same concept. By this I mean fundamentally changing the idea of the robot instead of optimizing on the parts that could use improvement. Not only does iterating properly allow you to have a reliable robot, which we found is the key to success, it also allows you to have sound autonomy and practice drivers. Which leads us to our second point, the importance of your first iteration. Many teams take their first iteration as an opportunity to build a non-quality robot due to the fact that there's less competition. But in reality, your first iteration should be a reflection of all your iterations. Now I'm going to hand it off to my friend Anissa, who's going to give us a demonstration of these concepts.
So a good way to visualize the concept of iteration is by looking at the power play season. So power play's idea was all about developing a strategy because you needed to have the same repetitive motions of cycling a cone onto a junction. Unlike center stage and free frenzy, where you could have an extra component in your robot that could give you points in endgame by like launching a drone or spinning a carousel. So our sister team, Epic Odyssey's strategy for power play was to tailor each of their iterations to perform a specific strategy, meaning that each of these 5 iterations that you see over here have different components, and they're all completely different from the iterations that are before and after. And this is an ineffective iteration method because building a robot from scratch requires a lot of time and resources, which no one has an abundance of. There's also a lot that's in the unknown. So when we were developing these iterations, some things didn't go as expected, and it required more time to be put in to fix those iterations. And then when the time came for a new iteration to be built, this process was repeated all over again. So using this as an example, our team Expedition changed our iteration process for the past season. We decided to divide the robot into 3 major components: the drivetrain, the intake and handling mechanism, and the drone launcher. The drivetrain and the overall robot remained the same, but we could change the individual components while the robot was in practice. And this allowed us to save time and resources so that we could value our team members and make our whole robot more productive.
And these are the examples of our iterations, and for the Expedition iterations. And now you might be thinking, didn't you guys advance to World Student Think Award? Why don't you teach us about how to get think instead? Why are you teaching us about all this robot iteration stuff? And you'd be right. Our specialty could be said that is the Think Award. However, our iterations were an integral part in getting that award. Without our many iterations and our consistent, well thought out ones as well, we probably wouldn't have been eligible at all. In the game manual center stage, under the award descriptions, the portfolio section, you can see that it very clearly says in multiple bullet points that the engineering portfolio, for example, the engineering portfolio must provide examples that the team has a clear understanding of the engineering design process and examples of lessons learned. What better way is to show the lessons that you've learned than to implement those lessons into your next iteration? It also says that portfolio format is less important, but it enables the judges to understand the team's design maturity. It's also important to have a good design maturity in order to show the judges that. And the last point that I want to mention was in the section, portfolio could reference specific experiences and lessons learned, but should capture the summary of the status of the team and the robot design. So obviously, I'm sure everyone probably realized that the robot design is important in Think Award, but a big part of that, which I think is a little neglected when trying to get eligible for the Think Award, is specifically your iterations. For example, our sister team Odyssey and Power Play, although the robot wasn't as consistent throughout the season, they did have well thought out iterations in the sense that, for example, the intake and outtake, was constantly improved. If you like look at it, you can see how the judges saw that they were learning from their mistakes. Of course, they did change too much, and we should avoid something like in an incident like that. But we should take the good as well. And yeah, that's pretty much all for this slide. Yeah. If you guys ever need help like with format portfolio, we'd be more than happy to help. So yeah, if anyone has questions.
All right, let's hear it for any questions from in-person folks? I think we have a question from online. Jareth asks, besides the must in a portfolio, what is something you think goes above and beyond?
No, besides the one.
The must in a portfolio.
So obviously it says you have to have a clear understanding. So especially the format, although it does say the format is less important, if you're able to design maybe a graph or something in such a way, specifically I would recommend specifically a table or a graph. That helps the judges show your iterations a bit better.
All right.
Also, if you show the pros and cons of each iteration and show like the math and physics that went behind each iteration, then you really like that too.
All right, and then Nikhil asks, how do you split the work up and get it all done?
There you go.
So we have sub-teams, we have building and marketing, which both work together at the end to make this happen. Specifically for the portfolio, like when we're documenting everything, we make sure that all of the sub-teams present their documentation so that it's easier for us when we're compiling the portfolio. And we have team leads for each of our sub-teams. So they are in charge of all the work that comes in the end. And that also helps us with the portfolio as well.
All right. Yes, we have one question here.
Does the sub-team check into the portfolio team, or does the portfolio team go out to each sub-team?
So each sub-team, when they have their documentation, they go ahead and give it to the portfolio team. And then once everything has been gathered and it's time to actually create the portfolio team will go in and check on the other sub-teams to make sure that they're all up to date with everything that they need.
All right, and then we have a question from Alexander online. How do you explain your robot's iterations in the portfolio?
Yeah, so basically we have kind of like pros and cons of it almost. So when we start off, we kind of want to show why we chose to do this. So like explaining the design requirements for the game and how that corresponds to what we made. And then as we go forward, we'll talk about what didn't work so well and what we decided to replace it with and why.
All right. Any more questions? All right, one more round of applause for Epic Expedition.